let's talk about the implementation, because there are quite a few questions about that in the chat. Do I understand correctly that you didn't end up going with any specific framework, like you didn't use LangGraph, AutoGen, etc., but what you did was to find a bunch of open source projects and in a surgical way understand which part of it is useful for you and just borrow those parts from those projects?
Yeah, if you take a look at the implementation of the open source projects, not all of them rely on something like LangChain or like LangGraph, but it doesn't mean that it goes against the industry standards. In what way? First of all, the most important stuff that Maher and we were looking into those open source projects is the actual implementation of a low-level details. Whereas, for example, LangGraph gives you the ability to form a shape of the pipeline that you can fill up with those details. For example, the details of implementation of a certain like data processing, data analysis, all those kind of things. And where I'm getting with all of that is, even though open source projects might not be using industry standard like frameworks like LangChain, for example, while working on your own stuff, you can always build the skeleton, the shape of the pipeline, for example, in LangGraph, and fill it up with experience implemented in code inside of those open source projects. So the most important part is not the framework itself, but the experience that is reflected in code. Because as you probably notice that, for example, whenever you have 100 contributors or like over 100 contributors of people who are actually sharing their knowledge, sharing their experience, paraphrasing even the prompts that you've been trying to build for your own stuff, this extraction of experience is probably the most valuable stuff that we were looking into, not the conformance to the industry standard frameworks that actually shape the pipelines.